6 of the Indie Creator Exchange. We're here today. It's a good fine Friday morning before the end of August with Chris Anderson. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time out. You're out on the East Coast, so you're up extra early for us, and we really do appreciate it. But how are you doing today?
I'm good. West Coast, but yes, it's
Wait,
early.
sorry. Yeah, it's almost lunchtime for me, so I'm feeling my blood sugar's a little down. But let's just get right into it. Thanks again for sending a couple. Jeez, we always look at it as one-on-one comics, but so many people share some great stuff, and you've done the same thing. And it's going to be an amazing episode. To be able to dive into all this and everything. And I just want to do a shout out to your agent, Matt King, who was on my butt for about 2 months. Saying you got to get Chris Anderson on. You got to get Chris Anderson on. So you were the first on the list once I cleared our first round of guests that we had at the beginning of the year. So long overdue. Thank you for joining us. So give us a heads up about you and your process as an indie creator.
So as an indie creator, I'm a little bit all over the place because I do work for publishers and I do work with other writers on self-published projects, but I also work on my own things as an artist and writer. So I kind of do a little bit of everything. It's always sort of just been how I work. Wherever my interests are tugged, I follow the smell. Um,
Yeah.
to put it in a weird way. And um, I like strange stories. I like weird imagery, and that's just always sort of been where my groove has been, and it's paid off well because I've worked on things like Creep Show, and then I've had my own like horror anthology, and I've worked in Heavy Metal Magazine, and I've kind of been all over the place. That an artist who could probably find a seat at the big two can go, but I like to push it a little stranger than their tastes tend to be, though I could tame it. And I find that self-publishing and indie publishing is the way to go for me. And that I also do storyboards for TV and movies and commercials and things like that. So I'm from the time that I wake up till the time I go to bed, I'm basically doing sequential art of some form or another. But comics are my passion, the number one thing that I want to do. So I've made it work for me. I was a teacher for like 18 years, and for the last 6 years, I've been able to just live doing this.
Oh wow. So yeah, let's go a little into the bio and the early days.
Mhm.
We all kind of start out when we're like 9, 10, 12, something like that, and we have our, defining influences. So why don't you walk us through that and then tell us your pre-comic about your pre-comics career.
Okay, let's see. October 7th, 1977, I was born.
Okay.
uh,
Nice birthday you got there.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I think it's pretty great.
That's
It's
my
worked out
that's my
so far.
brother's yeah, my
All
brother's
right.
October my brother's October 7th too, and I'm December 7th, so my
Hey.
birthday's Pearl Harbor Day.
Oh,
And then
well,
when the crazy attack happened in Israel, now he
yeah.
said, "Well, now I'm there right there with you."
Yeah,
So
now we're all screwed, right? Yeah, that's no fun. But let's see. In the early days, I have older brothers. I have four older brothers. They're like my next closest brother is 16 years older than me.
wow.
And they were sort of in succession, one after the other. Um, and so there were comics in my house, dated all the way to from like 1969 to maybe like the late 70s by the time I was born. So in the basement there were like the first Swamp Thing was just like crumpled in a box, with Playboys.
Right.
Uh, I just so that was my first discovery of comics was this box that had like Weird War Tales with Alex Nino's artwork and stuff like that in it. There were some heavy metal magazines, and there was this like strange quality about all of that artwork that I really gravitated towards. Um, and it's kind of stuck with me. And it's one of those things. My brother is also was a fine artist. He was a sculptor, and he did a thing called Transmuted Origins, and it's where he would take these like sculptures, and he would put layer after layer, like famous sculptures, and he would put layer after layer after layer after layer of paint on top of them until they looked totally different. And so I think memory kind of serves in that way, where you have these ideas of what artwork looked like when you were a kid, and it changes in your mind as you get older, and then you actually see it again, and it's either better than you thought it was or as good as it was. But no matter what, my style started to develop based off of my memory of what those things looked like, as opposed to what they
Yeah.
actually looked like.
Right.
Yeah, isn't
And
it amazing? Isn't it amazing, like how much we're shaped by whatever just happens to be in the house?
yeah,
Whether it's
yeah,
your parents' albums, and they had a couple of cool rock albums mixed in with the Mantovani, and that ends up being your like favorite, thing. But with comics, magazines, right? And you're just drinking it all in when you're so impressionable, and when you see it now, like, it just brings you right back, to those memories. So
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. Um, and then probably, I was always drawing, but I wasn't drawing comics really. I was just drawing anything. My dad was he could draw pretty well, although he didn't do it professionally. Um, so I would just sit and watch him, and I'd kind of copy what he was doing when he would just kind of doodle cartoons and stuff like that. And when junior high came along, I think it was the Batman, Tim Burton Batman movie came out. So 88, 89, whenever the machine of publicity for that was going on, it got me pretty hard. So I started going over to the gas station spinner rack and pulling off all the Batman comics that I could. But that was 89. So very shortly after that, or during that time, you had Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, Eric Larson, all the guys who would later go on to found Image, working at Marvel. So I started pulling their stuff off the racks. And then I found out that there were actual shops that sold comics in town. And I got a pull list. And pretty soon I had like a $40 a week comic
had it. Yeah.
pull that my dad was surprisingly okay with shelling out $40 a week. And like in 1990, 1991, that wasn't
Yeah. Well,
small
it's
change,
it's better than dime bags.
Yeah, it's very true. But he also like my dad, like I really swallowed the Rob Liefeld pill, and just like loved, like I was obsessed with his work in particular at that
Yeah.
age. My dad would look at all these books that I would bring home and say, God, this is just too busy. I can't tell what's going on. Like what is happening here? And I would listen to that, and I'd be like, yeah, you're old, you have no idea what you're talking about. And he would like say like, well, look at this, check this out, and he would like show me Will Eisner's work, or and early Captain Marvel, Shazam stuff that he like grew up on, and Dick Tracy and things like that.
The good
And I
stuff.
got it. It clicked to me to tell stories in that way. So that is the direction that I started to go down. It was sort of like how to maintain the cool looking style and line work that these early Image guys were doing, but also tell a clear story. So there was this balance that I was from a very early age, junior high to high school, trying to find.
Yeah, that's a really interesting contrast between, Liefeld, because you're just trying to follow, the biggest thing. Well, this is number one on the racks right
Yeah,
now, for years. And then your dad brings you back to like, no, this is actual storytelling here, because all that, image stuff, it's just a bunch of pinups and posing and standing around looking, dramatic. And, there's no actual sequences, there's no actual story that sucks you in and makes you forget where you are and, and takes you away. So,
Right.
um, that's where you go back to the classics, and even the Captain Marvel, like those are Fawcett comics, those were cheap, disposable, kind of like escapism, but they did rely on a story, there was an ending, there was a beginning, there was a middle, right?
Hmm.
It wasn't just all about the aesthetic and dramatic poses and weird anatomy and detail, so
Yeah.
in, interesting evolution.
Well, there was a
Yeah.
writer and an editor, involved too.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a.
Back in publishing before um, Image. These just artist guys who just had this great technical ability. Just jump the Marvel ship and then go ahead. But I was teaching. I had gotten out of college in '92 and was teaching 14-year-olds, about 36 of them. And man, I was overeducated about it. And of course, I was constantly coming in with my heavy metal magazine, especially Mobius at that time, Beasley with Slain and everything. And Conan the
Yeah.
Barbarian, John Buscema. But I remember definitively they were pretty much in a rowdy mood one day, and they were going to take control of the direction of the class, and so they started demanding to learn to draw stylistically like Rob Liefeld. And I said, well, let's just back up a second. I'm the editor here. Okay, I'm the publisher here. So you guys got to give me a story that I can then deal with, and then I'll get. And I remember all of them just kind of slumped in their seats, and they looked at me and they're like, story. And I will say, the majority of them, it was like a light switch had gone
Hmm.
on, because then they started learning that the classroom wasn't just me showing them how to draw something, it was me helping them bring that story out. And Image didn't get much until they started paying, what was it, Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman $1 million per copy per issue
Yeah.
to write a story, which then even at that point they weren't really holding into anything. But
Yeah. I think we got to give them a tiny bit of credit though, because it had the energy. They were onto something because
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah,
it had the energy, and from like a preteen to like a mid-teen demographic, like it had
yeah,
us in its hands. We were all there for it, and we didn't care what the story was. We were
it's
looking
true,
at the art,
it's true,
and that is sort of gone from comics now.
wow,
Comics that have completely lost that age demographic. It's all
yeah,
manga now, and manga has got sort of both things going for it right now. It's a different way style of storytelling. The stories are there, and the stories are great most of the time. They're just different because they're longer and have more breadth to them. But it also has this like interesting art style from mangaka to mangaka. And when you look at sort of American comics, and obviously I'm not speaking as a that it's as a monolith, but most of the time the art is just so uninteresting and geared towards the films now for big two books that nobody wants to read it, and it's all geared towards 50-year-old men now at this point. And it's something's got to change. So I think there has to be this balance of like interesting art and good story. And I don't know why we can't figure out that that's what needs to happen, but where it is happening is in the indie books.
yep,
That's where
yep,
it's happening right now.
yep,
So yeah, we have gone through a bunch of eras. Kurt and I are a little older, so we started out with those 20 cent Marvel and DCs, and then you do see Image coming along and
Mhm.
kind of changing the game. For substantially um, I mean, it's so funny that the name of their company is Image, right? Isn't that just so apropos?
Yeah,
Um, but
they're called Ego.
yeah, I mean, it's right. Yeah, exactly. It's just like eye candy and glossy paper and Photoshop coloring and all the the new twists. But one interesting thing is that it's creator owned. It's a different business model. That really shakes up the industry. Eventually, Marvel and DC have to after trying everything else, they have to open up to a lot more creators, a lot more risky kind of not house style creators. And so that really did tug at the at the old guard. But you started to see. I mean, when Watchmen and The Dark Knight come out, everyone's thinking wow about like really juicy stories and you know fuller length stories. Really
Yeah,
really they're just movies in a comic. It's like the cinematic effect of things. um, and then like now, fast forward, and we have all of these influences in our past, and everybody's trying to juggle it all together and come up with something. You have so many people in it with so many different like corners of the industry and the semi pros and the complete amateurs who are all just chugging away all at the same time. So it's an interesting place we're in now, and here we're seeing, kind of a mature artist coming out of that, where you're choosing your own direction, right? You're saying you do have the chops to work for the bigs, but you choose not to because we only have one life to live. And um, one thing we skipped is tell us a little bit about. You said you had a whole teaching career. So where were you teaching, and how did that all come about?
well, I'll back it up a little bit because once sort of the end of high school started happening, I was also like, if I wasn't drawing, then MTV was always on in the background at the time, and I would. My brother had a guitar laying around. I picked it up. I learned how to play it. I started band in high school, so comics sort of went to the wayside. I started playing music more. Um, I went to college for a year to study art. And during that time, the drummer in my band got a job out here. I'm from Minnesota. He got a job on Sabrina the Teenage Witch. He played Harvey. His name's Nate Richard. He was the drummer in my band, one of my best friends, and he flew me out on Christmas break from college to
Oh,
LA.
cool.
And I said, why did my forefathers choose to move to Minnesota where it's freezing and I've got this artistic talent. I'm gonna move to LA. Nate and I are going to start a band. He started playing guitar at the time, so we kind of became this like folk duo action thing that we had going on, and started playing music. And then while I was living out here, I actually didn't get into art school because I wanted to go for animation, experimental animation, because comics at the time, that was right when the bubble had burst, the speculator bubble had burst, and there was no money in comics. It was not a
Right,
career choice
right.
at the time. And Image was happening, but in order to get your book into Image, it was,
Yeah,
first of all, I wasn't ready, but about the
you had
only
to
path you could
had to
take.
conform, had to conform a lot.
You had to conform, and I just wasn't good enough yet. But uh, so I started an animation company on my own. I said, well, if you're not going to take me, the college had said that I was uh, too happy of an artist. They had their quota of happy artists. They needed more angry artists, which was very weird because
What?
Okay.
that was what they said in
That's
my admissions. And
wow.
the boards that I gave them for my animation thing was very dark. So I don't know what they were talking about. But I started my own animation company with some other guys. We did a lot of intros for like BET. Television,
Uh-huh.
Soul Train, and a bunch of things like
And
that.
we was this 2D cell
2D,
Flash?
yep.
Yeah,
2D, yep.
right.
Um, and that's how I found out that animation wasn't for me. So
The labor
uh,
involved.
it was just way too much. I didn't enjoy it. I was riding high off of watching Liquid Television and Aeon Flux and stuff
Yeah.
like that at the time, and thought that I was going to be doing stuff like that, or at the very least, I was trying to get into experimental animation. I wanted to do stop motion,
Yeah.
but it just wasn't in the cards. It was I was like 19, 20 years old, stupid, not ambitious at all. Thought that everything was going to fall in my lap. Just
Like all
I
of
had a
us.
lot of maturing to do.
Yeah.
So instead, I became a teacher.
Right.
I was like, well, if this creative thing's not going to work out right now, then I'm going to try to do something good. So I became a teacher, and I taught elementary and preschool for 18 years. And during that time, I didn't really read comics like from mid high school up until like through the early 2000s. Really,
You didn't
it
miss
wasn't.
anything.
I That's what I gather now. But also, it gave time for me, my style, to kind of progress in its own direction because I wasn't really looking at anything that was going on at the
Hmm.
time. I didn't do a lot of those tricks that a lot of artists seemed to be doing at the time that were just really bad.
Right.
I didn't pick up those bad habits. Uh, it was
So
like the
you.
new 52 when DC launched the new 52. I sort of dipped my toe back in and started to see what was out there. And I liked some of the stuff. And so I kind of got back into comics. And it took a while. I did a couple little anthologies and things like that. Uh, and then while I was teaching, my friend David Acampo and I did a book called Lost Angels together. And that was my first like graphic novel sized story, 5 issue story sized thing that I ever did. And it sold pretty well. And it got, it's been optioned twice now. And so that was really good. At the same time, I was starting to do storyboards in my spare time, or I would take time off of work because if I could do, uh, 2 or 3 storyboard days a month, just days of doing storyboards a month, I was making as much as I was teaching the entire month. So I had to take these storyboards. And if a director comes to you and says, "Hey, I got boards, can you do it?" And you're like, "No, I'm sorry, I can't." They never come back to you. They find somebody else and
Right.
they stick with them until it's just that's kind of how it
Yep.
goes. And the 18-year mark was coming up. I was turning 40, and comics was always just what I wanted to do. And I was losing these storyboard jobs, so my wife was kind of like, this is what you want to do. If you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. Let's try to live off of my salary. She was also a preschool teacher at the time, so not much in Los Angeles
Boy.
where rent is stupid. Um, and that was there's nothing like trying to swim with cement blocks on your feet, jumping off a cliff or whatever you want to call it. But my legs got stronger and I landed in water, jumping off the cliff, and I was successful like pretty much right off the bat, getting more storyboard work and then getting more comics work. So that's kind of where it happened, and I've been working since.
Interesting. So,
So I need to ask a question.
Yeah.
Digital or traditional in your
Oh,
process?
traditional for comics, digital for storyboards.
Okay. All right. So the stuff that I'm looking at right here is pretty much just all pen and ink slinging on paper, scanned, and then maybe some added screens. Is
Added
that is that
screens.
is that kind of the
Yep. Drawn traditional, scanned, and then screens are added from high resolution scans of real screen tones.
Right.
Yeah.
So
nice.
that was
All
interesting
right.
because I kind of did the opposite. I was working as an artist my whole life, and then I became a teacher around 40. So now I'm in like year 17, and I do plan to get to at least 20, and then stop and then get back into comics full time, or as much as time as I can. But what was so you were working in the Los Angeles school district?
I was working at a private school, but at the end, the Los Angeles School District came in to headhunt me. They wanted me to head the music program for the charter schools, a couple of the charter schools in the area.
Uh-huh.
And I was just so fried and done with teaching by then. It would have been really great money. It would have been insurance and a pension, and I let all of it go to do this.
Right. So yeah, because 18 is a weird number, right? Because you get two more and you get 20, but there is supposed to be some kind of prorated thing if you're in the public system. So
Yeah,
I
no,
just
there
want
was no pension or anything at the private school that I was at. It was, here's your money, here's your paycheck,
right,
do what you
and
want
you're
with it.
you're on your own, right? All right.
Yeah,
So people listen to this, so maybe
yeah,
cautionary tale, but
for sure.
it's
Parents,
yeah,
parents should listen to this and stop telling your kids to go be a teacher to make a living as an artist.
right, right. Well, you could waitress or teach, whatever. But the the point is, like, you took the leap and you jumped out, and you're talented enough where you don't really have to worry about living in a box or anything. So you can parlay that into jobs. All right, so now take us through, the stuff that you've published. You said that you put out something called Lost Angels. Was
Right.
that self-published, or was that with a company? What was the deal?
That was through a company called Comiker. They are the publisher of Lost Angels. We were one of the first books that they ever took on. They're actually out of Minnesota, just coincidentally.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Oh,
Dave Dave got that deal hooked up, and what they were trying to do at the time, this was, I think, like 2007.
Right.
They were trying to do a thing where they were kind of like, listen, we want to give everybody access to these books, so we're going to put them out on the website, for free. You can read them for free,
Huh.
but then you can also, buy the actual book. And in order to fund the book, they did a Kickstarter for it, and the Kickstarter was extremely successful.
Right.
So that was sort of their business model, and it worked out pretty well. I only had to, before that physical book came out, I only had to put out 2 pages a week, which was great for my schedule.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so finally at the end, it was collected and kickstarted, and then made available. And then we did a second volume that was never printed, but is, I think, still available digitally on Amazon.
Huh. So
Um,
they give away the digital
mhm.
in order to get it out there, right? It's
Yep.
kind of like Google, being free for 7 years before they monetize, right? And
Yep.
then if somebody wants to buy it to actually have the collectible slash investment version of it, right?
Right.
Then they can just order that up. But in either case, the property, gets out there, and then also your name is getting out there now, right?
Yeah, so it started to kind of snowball from there because, once you have something out and you've proven that you can put something out, then, people start to pay a little bit more attention to you. Obviously, if you don't have anything out, how are they supposed to pay attention to you, right?
Right.
But I like to say that like I said, I had only gone to 1 year of college at that point. So everything that I did was basically self-taught, and the only thing I learned in that first year is how to critique people. So that was kind of useless to some degree. Like,
Right. We're going to teach you all the fancy words for things, but now we're not going to show you how to do anything. That comes
yeah,
later.
it was actually kind of important because being from Minnesota, every critique is sort of like, oh, that's nice. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's different. You know, that's not helpful to a creative
Yeah,
person. You know, you tell me what's wrong. Tell me what you hate about it.
right. We want you
You
to
know,
be angry.
tell me what's working. Tell me what's not working. Right? Yeah,
Right,
they taught me how to be a dick, basically.
right,
Um,
right.
uh, but that's important. But it is just for pure survival. You got to be a jerk sometimes.
Yeah,
Um,
but it's also, I mean, critiquing is, in theory,
yeah,
it's like what not to do, right?
right. I say that jokingly, really, because you're saying things that some people can really take the wrong way, but you're
Right.
really just trying to point things out for them to think about, is what it is.
Yeah. Right.
You can. There's different ways to go about doing it where you don't sound like a jerk, but my college basically was going to a drink and draw in Los Angeles,
Uh-huh.
uh, where Dan Panosian and Dave Johnson and Jeff Johnson would hold court
Oh wow.
every week, every Thursday downtown. At the time, it bounced around a little bit, but I started going into downtown, and it would just be a big gathering of um, artists that would hang out. And you would get Bill Sienkiewicz would show up, Jim Lee would show up.
Nice.
Apparently, back in the day before I started going, you'd get the likes of Toth showing up or Mobius coming in and holding court. Um, you know, so what I would do is I would find a script online
Uh-huh.
and I would pencil it and I would bring it in and I would go to Jeff and Dave and Dan each and have them just, tell me what was wrong with it. Um, Dave in particular would not hold back. And people would kind of be like, oh my God, are you okay? After the critique. And I was like, yeah, I'm okay. Like,
Let's
the
go.
he told me what to do and I'm going to go and do it. So every week I would go back home, redraw the page, bring it back. Is this
Yeah.
better? Yes, that's better. But now you got to change this, this, and this. This isn't working. Go back, rethink it. Let's think about this. Let's think. They'd pull out a piece of paper and say, think about this, think about this, think about this. Why are you drawing? Why are you just making up fire escapes in your head? Walk right outside right now and look up. There's a fire escape. Take a picture of it. Use photo reference. You
Yeah.
got to work on
The
the way
little
that you
things.
draw females. You got to work on cars. You got to work. Don't push your perspective this far because it's going to start to get really weird and wonky. All sorts of things. The rule of like a million things. I learned so much from those guys, and that really helped. And I think that through looking at Lost Angels, you can start to see where I start picking up those things. But then once Lost Angels was out at Drink and Draw, I met Mark Sable, who was a writer he had done some stuff over at DC and things like that. And he asked me if I wanted to work, and he gave me two projects to work on. One was like this super high tech futuristic book that ended up coming out through Aftershock Comics later with the correct artist. And the other one was Chaotic Neutral that you have there. And
Yeah.
that was I drew that about 6 years ago. It just came out last year because for several different reasons there was stumbling blocks along the way. But that was my next book to be self-published. No, let me back that. No, yeah, okay. So that was my next book, self-published book that I drew. And in between there, the book that I did called Spectral Showcase of Fear, also with David Campo, who wrote Lost Angels, came out. And so those are basically the three main self-published books that I have out right now. I'm just about to start on issue 2 of Chaotic Neutral. So that started to tumble, and then Tim Seeley called me up one day out of the blue. I just started making friends in the industry. Called me up out of the blue and said, "Listen, I've got this 16-page film script that needs to be turned into a 12-page comic script, and they want you to do your best Bernie Wrightson, and it needs to be done in 6 days. Go."
Huh.
Whoa.
And I
Whoa.
said, yeah, right. But I
Never
was up,
enough
you know,
Mountain
I
Dew
was
in the
up,
world.
yeah, I was up very late working on that. It ended up being Creep Show, and Greg Nicotero uh, wrote it. Uh, and then like halfway through, there was like, there's a monster in it, and halfway through, he was sort of like, "Oh yeah, by the way, here's the monster design." I was like, "Ah, shit! Now I got to redraw this on top of it." But he was so thankful. Tim was so thankful that he said, anytime that you want to do anything he was editing, he was editor at Heavy Metal at the time. He said, anytime you want to do something in heavy metal, I'd love to have you. So I said, yeah, like I got some ideas. The first thing that they put me on was a story with Justin Jordan. And then from there, I started writing my own stories. I did one other story with my friend Perry Crow, but I was in about 12 issues, I think. And I did a lot of the writing from there.
And
Um,
what were you doing in heavy metal? Was that sci-fi? That was original sci-fi that you were writing and drawing?
yep, yep. Sci-fi, weird, kind of like horror sci-fi stuff. Yep, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I
Cool.
tried to be as true to like the old heavy metal style and way of doing things as possible. Even kind of skewing my stuff to look a little bit more like Drule or Mobius. Not too
Uh-huh.
much, I'm not trying to rip them off. I just want the spirit in there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You
you know,
wanted you want it to be the house style for the book that you're in, right?
yeah, right. The house style from 1970 78.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I mean, trust me, readers will appreciate that.
They
They
did,
know.
they
Yeah,
did.
they know. Yeah.
Yeah, they really did.
So
They did
this is
appreciate it.
this is coming out in the 2010s.
No, this is heavy metal stuff came out up until just like I was in the last issue, all the way up to the
Oh,
last
so
issue.
the 2020. Oh, so the late stages, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. I didn't
do
get
you
to
have any?
finish the story in there. I ended up getting the rights back to that story, so I will be finishing that story and putting that out. I think through Cosmic Lion Productions.
Oh,
Oh,
cool.
cool.
Hopefully in the next year,
Right.
either that or kickstarting it, one of the two.
Gotcha. Interesting. And so being on the inside, do you have any inside poop or any updates that you could tell us about the state of heavy metal now? Is it dead? Is it coming back out? Is it in litigation? Like what's going on?
It's coming back out. Yeah, it's I've actually I swore that I wasn't going to do anything after I had a bitter taste in my mouth after the last owners did what they did with it.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and it seemed the people I know the people that have taken it over, and I trust them. And
Right.
so I have had meetings with them about possibly coming back and helping them create some new stuff. So
Right. Oh,
So
that's
if I can
hopeful.
interject,
Mhm.
because I hear a lot in comic talk on YouTube about how there's no entry point, for young people or just anybody's. Like you have to go to a comic book store or you've got to be privy to what's going on with Kickstarter in order to get a comic book or get entryway to a comic book. But my entryway was 7-Eleven, spinner racks, which I kind of really ignored other than Conan, but Heavy Metal magazine I was sold,
Yeah,
and Sword of Sorcery. Those were the two things I was getting a hold of at 12 and 13 years old and consuming as a comic book. And so when I was sitting next to friends, and they're going through Spider-Man and X-Men and that, which I liked a lot, I would go, well, look at this. And I'd show them Drew Ye. And they'd be like, what the hell is that? I don't know, but I think it's just amazing. So here I want to get into the third part of our interview, Chris, and you actually have been hitting all the points. By the way, all my questions are stricken off, but and you've even led us into this really cool place, which is, do you think that the people who are going to take on, the rebirth of heavy metal are really going to utilize the fact that they can be on newsstands? You know what I mean? And use that as a drawing point where, somebody's just at the Barnes and Nobles with their cup of coffee and a banana, and they're just wandering back and forth, and they're like, "What the heck is that heavy metal thing?" And
Uh
all of a
huh.
sudden, when they crack it, they're like, "Whoa, comic books!" You think that's
Right.
possible?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I think they will utilize it. I know it's still going to be magazine format. I think it's gonna come back. With a new number one, as far as I know. That was announced. Before they announced the final issue.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think that they're the thing is too, like, I, talking to retailers hate magazine format or anything other than standard format um, comics, right? But more and more companies are saying, well, too bad. Uh, you look at Distillery and you look at the way Titan is putting out the new like Conan, and there's Penthouse Comics that are selling like hotcakes
Yeah,
apparently. They're all of these are magazine sized books, so they're just going to have a section in their shop that is for that size book. It's just, you got to roll with the punches. People want uh, bigger
Format.
artwork. They want bigger books to look at. It seems like not all. I mean, traditional comics are the way that they are, and nobody wants them to change, really, that I'm aware of. But yeah, but I think that more and more the magazine size is becoming a standard, and in indie comics, it's very much
yeah,
uh, around. I know, like, 2 years ago, I have a box that was for magazine size books, and it was practically empty, and now it's filled to the max, almost all with new stuff. So
Interesting.
it is coming
Yeah,
back
that
up, and they do have magazine distribution. So, like you said, Barnes and Noble was
yeah.
one of the few places I could even find it before. So yeah,
yeah,
I have high hopes.
well, yeah, last time I was in the bookstore, I saw, all these new kind of like creepy and eerie reboots with different names, different companies, like, but they're obviously trying to cop the look and the feel, and they weren't bad. Weren't until you get to the very last story where, the quality fell off a little bit, but um, that format, another thing about floppies is that if you are in a store, and you're not a comic store and you're trying to make it work, they just they're floppy. So they start to bend, and the cover starts to peel off, and they get damaged pretty easily. It's a pain in the ass, and magazines a little more sturdy, especially if they have a heavy cover stock, where you could maybe they'll last a little bit longer. All considerations now that the comic stores are all in decline, and you have all these like interesting opportunities, all these vape shops everywhere in the whole country, right? Maybe they put up a rack, or or in a books, the traditional bookstores, or the chains, they'll if they'll try stuff, and if it sells, they'll keep with it, and so
Yeah,
they have every size. I mean, Barnes and Noble, all those chains, they have every size of book in there. It's just a matter of do they have like entire displays, because when you saw the manga start to take over in sales, you see these racks that are just like built for that size, and they're they can show the spines, or they can flip them around, or they could do half and half. So they have a lot of flexibility there. But with with magazines, you gotta see the cover. You gotta see the front. So then you're doing the vertical thing where they're like layered over each other, and you're just seeing the mastheads sneaking out a little bit, right? That's how at Barnes and Noble sometimes it gets so crowded, that the magazines are just shoved in the back, and you gotta fumble around for them.
yeah.
So Chris,
Mhm.
do you have a particular, like, maybe wish list that the direction of comics would hopefully go in the next, like, 2 years?
Uh, I would hope that uh, that's a big question.
I know it's loaded.
um,
Well, go to 10 years then.
yeah, well, no, I would
Five.
hope I would hope that my hope is the same for whatever year, really. My hope is that big two companies start to take more chances with interesting artists. Uh, that everything isn't so cookie cutter anymore, and that the state of the industry right now is that there aren't very many places for creators to go to maintain their IP, to hang on to their stories and ownership of them.
Mhm.
There's like Image. There's I don't even know if Dark Horse I think still has something for you to do, and there's like like companies that are a couple that are just coming up like Cosmic Lion and places like that. But
Right.
there isn't much. Most of these places they take the IP,
Yep.
and they that's problematic for creators, because once you get this amount of money, that's you're basically that's it for you. Like you're done. Um, until you move on to the next thing. And you need to have something that has the possibility of generating you money, or you should at least be able to participate in the success of the things that you work on. And so I
Yep.
just hope that more companies come around that offer that to creators. There's just it's lacking, and as more and more of these small publishers pop up to try to create things and push them into movie deals, it's become this sort of weird industry of companies getting flush with money, creators rushing there because it's a place that will take them. They take in, they go you and you, everybody else out, and then they run out of money and they fold. And that's
Yeah.
just sort of that's not sustainable at all. Like you can't keep going on like that. So I hope that the indie world has probably been building up and gaining momentum and figuring itself out for the last maybe 10 years. And
Yeah.
you've got creators that started out just like me, kickstarting projects, and crowdfunding their stuff, and hitting the convention scenes and the circuit, and getting their stuff out and trying to make a name for themselves. Hopefully people from that group are going to start to build up. Everybody kind of already has this idea that we all need to help each other out. And I could really see this sort of utopia in the future where everybody's self-publishing their own stuff under an umbrella, where people are able to get distribution for their work afterwards, because that's a huge problem. Once you have
Yeah.
crowdfunded your thing, now you got 1,000 books that you have to hand sell, and that's really tough. So if there could be some way for people to maintain their stuff, do it independently, uh, at a professional level, and get it out in front of people, just getting the word out that comics are friggin' fantastic, and they're not all about superheroes. There's comics about everything.
Right.
It's like saying that movies are only about superheroes. Like there's every
Yeah.
genre of movie. There's every genre of comic. More than there are of movies, because there's just art comics, and there's art movies, but art comics are way cooler. So I wish people would just like more people would pay attention to it, and I think that there's a possibility that that's going to happen. So
It is a. It seems like I mean we talk a lot on the show about all these different issues. The issues of working with a publisher, giving it away, maybe when you're younger, really building your name rather than your title, because once you have your name, then you could go, like, you can get exploited on Beavis and Butthead, but then you could make millions on King of the Hill, right? So it all depends if
hmm
you have a name, right? Um, the thing about like America, right, and what's happening now, where the manga is really penetrating households, is that you wonder, in the near future, whether household penetration will rise to the level of Japan, because in Japan, I mean, this was probably 10, 15 years ago, but I heard a stat that 1 out of 20 Americans, buy comics regularly, and in Japan, it's 1 out of 4, Japanese.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it sounds about right, and but also, you heard the same thing about like Italy, and other places like Europe, so you wonder if that might be changing. I mean, is cartooning taking over the world? Every store you go to, you see, squishies and plushies, and and emoticons and characters everywhere. So you wonder if that kind of thing is changing. But as far as comics, the definition of comics being like, sequential art and, stories, drawn, illustrated stories, um, it's still the bastard child, right, of literature. Um, and as a teacher too, how they've been trying to, like, work it into schools. Graphic Here's a graphic novel about, Paul Revere's ride. I
Hmm.
can't get a kid to read it, so maybe if they just, look through the pictures, that something will seep in, right?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And we're trying to, like, been bribing kids, with that, like visual learners and stuff. And so that's also on the rise too, slowly and steadily, right? And
Hmm.
I guess it's bad news for books and, and reading, but but yeah. So thinking this out, it might be changing over, but we still have these. There's no way around it. We just still have these gatekeepers. At the end of the day, when it comes to, like, the point of purchase, and that's a real bottleneck, for, this utopia of, like, creatives being able to work out of their house, and, they're really prolific, they're cranking out pages, but yet they still need someone else, right, to help them do the business side of it, or some platform, right?
Yeah, I
And
think it's in this weird. I think it's in this weird spot where it doesn't. It probably doesn't make a lot of financial sense for somebody to get
Mhm.
into the business of distributing indie comics right now. I think that might change with time. Um,
mhm.
uh, but gatekeepers as far as distribution, yeah, like you're talking like Diamond and the distribution and stuff like that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, well, Diamond still has the old model where they have,
Uh huh.
a big preview guide, and they circulate it out to all the remaining comic shops. I don't know how many are remaining. You're probably just a couple hundred. And then they take pre-orders, and sometimes they have customers that'll pre-order something and they'll put it in a folder and a pull list. And that adds up, and so that business is still going, but it's like a fraction of what it used to be in
Yeah.
the heyday, So,
Right.
you have other models like Kickstarter, which are basically doing that online, but the it ends up being pretty expensive. You're paying $20 for a comic, let's say, and it's not even coming to your mailbox for months, right?
Yeah.
So there's a couple new things. I mean, we do have UPS and all these delivery methods right now. So, if there was, just dreaming here, but if there was a big, indie consortium online collective, and people could go, click a link, kind of like the Bandcamp model, maybe,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
and then, end up getting, you get paid for something that somebody orders, you get subscribers, you could have, the membership model built into, like a Patreon thing built into, it could have a lot of different tools, just buy once, or else you can become a subscriber and get updates. So, I mean, we have all these tools now. You could have Instagram, and cultivate your following that way. But then, everything's going through Instagram. There's no way for somebody to say, "All right, buy." There's no buy button on Instagram, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
those are just the things that we're thinking of, and we'd love to get your views too, because you're in the game here,
Yeah.
and you're working at a, pretty high level. You're also seeing the intersection. You're where you are out there. You're seeing the intersection of film and comics a lot too. Um, so I don't know if, how we're doing on time, Kurt, but maybe
Well, let's let
um,
let's let let's let Chris tie up the future of comics rant, because we're going to get them back. So, the best thing about this episode so far is that we still have a whole bunch of questions that we'll find some answers that we can come back to. But Chris, go ahead and give us your final remarks on just what you think the future of comic books could be, and then we're going to get you to give us a little feedback on our Turbo Pitfall.
Well, I think that there's less gatekeeping than there ever was, since you do have these models where you can put things out by yourself and get the word out on your own through social media, even though there's algorithms to trick and all that stuff. It is. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's easy by any definition. But I think creatives have to also get creative about how they're reaching people. And I think that we need to try as a whole to figure out how to reach new people, because, I think that really it goes all the way back to the Frederick Wortham trials of, the 50s that really decimated the American comic industry. And I don't think that we've ever really fully recovered. You could argue the 90s speculator boom, but that was like some Wall Street insider trading kind of bullshit. It wasn't real. It was all fake. Yeah. It was a bubble.
Yeah.
So, but to really reach people, really reach new audiences, we've got to think outside of the box. It's probably not going to be the way that we want it with like traditional comics that you hold in your hand. Is probably going to be some sort of digital thing, but I don't know. We've got to just start to think of something. We've got to reach new people and make this something that, more people should be able to do this creators should be able to do this as a living, and not just a small amount of people, or do it because they love it or do it in their free time. This should be something that should be viable for a lot more people. It has the potential to. And I think we just got to get creative about the way that we get it out there. That's why this year I've been really pushing my Patreon and pushing different ways, like my new book you can only read it on my Patreon, even though it's coming up very slowly because I'm working on other projects. But, you just got to think of different ways to get it out to people. And Patreon's not a good example, really, because it's kind of a wonky app to navigate. And, if my mom, who's 87 years old, wants to use it, there's no way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But you are looking for something where you're in constant contact with your fans, right?
Yeah, no, and that's the beauty of it. And I've got some really, really great and really loyal fans, and I try to, return and their appreciation as much as possible, So that's one of the really great things about it.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so let's jump into a little Turbo Pit Fighter feedback, questions, or anything because it's what the exchange is really all about. And you got a copy?
Yeah, I do. I think I left it in my bedroom. And my wife
it's
is
okay. It's okay.
So, but I can see here.
It exactly. And the whole idea behind it is to tease. And part of that is even just the questions. But please, let's have your your critique.
Yeah, you guys are doing some really interesting stuff with this. The pages are super detailed and dense. There's a lot of stuff going on in them, but at the same time, it's still really clear, and I can tell what's going on, which is a hallmark of a good comic to me. It's also got this just deep love on every page that I can tell that you guys are putting into it with the way that you're rendering it. I can, Jake, I can see you penciling right now, and then it's cool to see how you pencil and then see what Kurt's inks look like over the top of it. Right. And your inks were really interesting to me, Kurt, because they almost look like there's still pencil in it, because you is there still pencil in it, or did you erase?
There's graphite. What my little secret trick is that you got white of page, black of ink, which is I call like the 80% inking, where it's
Yeah.
all linear. It's all linear. Then what I do is I take liquid masking fluid, and then I basically spot my whites. So
Oh,
I haven't even spotted my blacks yet. Though
yeah.
Jake could indicate some things, but then what I want, and this is actually an art school thing, that I picked up and from painting, if you will, that I've never been able to let go of. But once I have the white spotted with the liquid masking fluid, I then cover it with a layer of water soluble graphite. And so now
Oh,
I've got this gray value that's
yeah.
just running. It's running across, and with an eraser, I can knock things back down. I can pull them back up. But then immediately, what happens is I have to start then anchoring the blacks, to help move things through. And then it's noodling things together. And then when I get to about 95, I feel like I'm about 95% complete. It goes in front of Jake, and then Jake gets the ability as the penciler to say, I wasn't really thinking that. I was thinking it was going to be a lot brighter, or you could go darker. You haven't gone darker enough, and I'm still able to just to work on the page. So there's nothing other than I have a panel. I believe this panel is a I printed it out again because I had this funkiness in an inking technique that Jake wasn't going to have. But printing it out without the gray washing, and then putting it down, and then you know equalizing it in there. The original still holds its continuity as a physical piece of work. And then other than the text boxes and the text itself, which was still all by hand lettering, that's where Jake and I meet again. Which, by the way, the last 6 pages took like 6 months for Jake and I to figure things out. You know what I mean? And that is, once again, I can't reiterate enough. Thanking somebody like yourself, Chris, to come on and spend time with us. Because Jake and I are very openly admitting that we're still trying to figure things out when it comes to like format and flow and technically kind of jiving with the kids out there, for one part or another. But yeah, you're touching on what I'm putting down.
Yeah, it's it's got a super unique look to
Thank
it,
you.
and it's got, you guys have that sort of, you're capturing some sort of like late 80s or late 70s, early 80s vibe that you
Uh,
don't see a whole lot anymore. There's almost a
Absolutely.
European feel to it too.
Oh, yep.
um
Once
and
again, it's that heavy metal magazine. That's heavy metal magazine and Savage Sword of Conan play constantly through my head.
Planet of
And
the Apes,
yeah,
yeah, I was just, it's like,
Savage Sword. Yeah, you got the
yeah,
yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, those influences when you're working in black and white, what Kurt does, he calls it inking, but it's really inking and toning, right?
yeah,
He's using like liquid frisket or whatever. You might see him like down the street corner, itching for a fix of some liquid frisket. I don't know how much it costs anymore, but
that's how you get it. Yeah, you can't buy it at an art store.
but he's got that, and he's also like he's also using like spray cans. He's huffing stuff over there. I don't know what he's doing. Sometimes you getting splatters everywhere. Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah,
Messier the better.
we're just very open. Like if you go back and see some of these episodes where we're doing some of this art direction, it's pretty interesting because that's like two collaborators. That's really like, okay, this guy's gonna tell me I have to redo this whole freaking panel, and I'm about to blow my gas here, right? Right. So it's always there's always a tension in the air. But that's the thing that we're putting right there on the screen. It's like
Yeah,
how it's all working out. So that's one thing that we do try to do because our pace is so slow,
yeah,
and and
right.
and and we're only like doing this once a week on Sundays. So uh,
So how long is it taking you guys to do a page?
it might take 3 weeks, three
Okay.
Sundays for me. I don't know
And how
about
many
Kurt.
pages is the book going to be?
Well, the first one's going to be 28, and I think they're going to be 30 after that. Um, because we're going to print them as floppies, 32 plus 4, I think, and and then compile when all six are done, when we're in our well into our 60s, I think. But um, we'll just do the whole graphic novel, But it along the way we're printing out the teasers, and when issue one comes out, that's going to be a big moment because that's when
Yeah.
we're going to like really try to go public and maybe like trying to monetize some of these things. But
Right. Well,
um
you're kind of already on the right path. Basically, so it's going to be 90 weeks for you to finish a 30-page book if you're consistent. So that's like a year and a half, right?
yeah, that sounds about right. While we're working, yeah. I mean, I'm
Right,
four
right.
years away from retiring, so it
Yeah.
might pick up the pace after that. But
Sure,
yeah,
sure. But you have the time, you have the time to put a little bit of extra love into it. Everything that I do, my mantra going through my head is just kick it out the door. If this panel doesn't work, you're gonna get it the next time around. And you have the time
yeah,
to actually spend and get it the way that you want it, which is fantastic. You're gonna wind up with like a superior product. Then what the problem that you're going to have is people are going to be like, well, where's issue two? you know,
right.
and
Oh,
then
it's
it's
good. It's gonna come. I mean, we're committed. At least the way things are right now.
yeah,
We're committed to doing this on the podcast. For 6 issues, and we'll see. Hopefully, we'll get there, and but if not, I'm sure there'll be a good reason. In the meantime, we both have other projects, side projects, and
mm-hmm.
quicker styles, for some things.
For sure, yeah, yeah,
I, yeah, I do some writing, but this is just a pace we're on, that if we just keep the pace, slow and steady, then we'll just keep generating pages and teasers and
yeah,
put it out. But it's been really interesting, to kind of like develop the process, and along the way, we started doing the podcast, and that's been getting a bunch of subscribers,
yeah,
and then we started doing these interviews now, where we're hearing what other people are doing, and we're really thinking about marketing and distribution, and everything down to the paper and the printers to use and everything. So, it's all just a journey we're on, and real happy to catch up with you and see, you know, what you have going on, and how you're thinking about stuff, because we're all after the same thing, right? We just want to, like, be creative and find our audiences, and just keep doing this, right, as a living, ideally, so.
Well, that's the thing, is you guys are on the right track because you've created this channel, Turbo Pit Fighter podcast, to draw attention to the book that you're working on, and so you're wearing your process on your sleeve, which I think, by opening your door to show everybody how it's going, and where you're at and how you're doing it pulls people in. It makes people more invested in your end product, really. And it's also, you're gaining subscribers, like you said, which are potential people that will buy the book, when it's done. And it'll be a celebration for so many people that you wouldn't have hit if you were just working on this in a vacuum. You know what I mean? It's the same reason that I have Chris Anderson Comics, the YouTube channel that I do, where I talk to cartoonists and stuff. It's because I'm trying to just like get my name out there, show people my work, build a bigger audience that's just would have been sitting there otherwise, left on the table. You have to build an audience of fans along the way, or it's for nothing, really.
Yeah.
So, you're promoting it while you're working on it, and I think that's fantastic.
I think one of the really neat things, and one of my other jobs is online marketing with artists. I work with a jazz musician, a pretty successful jazz musician, and a fantasy artist. But one of the theories that I've always had, and with Jake and I doing the Turbo Pit Fighter comic, we often hear I don't watch your videos on making Turbo Pit Fighter because I don't want to spoil the comic, which sounds counterintuitive. But what'll happen, and this goes back to what I'm backing up, attaching to Jake's car when he said it's going to be really interesting to see what the reaction is to the first issue release, because by then we will most definitely have 200 videos that people can go back to and watch us, which kind of creates, and this is theory, me speaking in theory, marketing wise online. It almost creates like another year's worth of buffering where people are like, okay, I can wait a year for the next issue. I get it, guys, because you spent 3 years making it, and I can now sit back and watch you make my favorite character doing her thing, and then I can see where this thing is. And especially when it comes to impressionable comic book artists, no matter if they're younger or older, like Jake and I, trying to get back in. So I think it has a lot to do with, like, I call it more like community, and building the community first in order where there's a trust mechanism that our consistency is that we just show up every Sunday. Now, sometimes we record something twice, once for this Sunday and then that Sunday, but it's just to keep that consistency.
Yeah.
But, because we have lives and to the such. But, we're very proud. I'm a little surprised that we made it over 1,000 subscribers.
That's fantastic.
And it took us 2.5 years, but I really feel like the majority of those people are honestly committed to our project. So that's a better feeling than, oh man, I got 100,000 subscribers. Well, who are these people and why are they subscribing to you?
Yeah, I want to add to that too. Like Chris, like when you have a gig and it's like everybody in the audience is in a band that's playing that same night.
All too well.
So I have a feeling that there are a lot. I think probably most of our viewers are comic aficionados that are looking for a comic and looking for interesting comics. But I think a lot of our viewers are comic makers, and they're keeping their hand because we're making a comic too, and that's what I think is hopefully helping everybody stay motivated in their own project, because a lot of times if you don't have a publisher or deadline or anything, it is hard to get that motivation to go through the paper blob on your desk and then get back into drawing and making pages. So we have this like regularity, where we're doing this, and we did it in the beginning to help each other, right? We're going to meet at a certain time and place, every week, and we're going to put in at least a good hour, working on pages together. And hopefully people, that could rub off on some of the other people. Like I imagine like some people like just have us on in the background, when they're drawing or inking or
Exactly.
coloring. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, everything
All
that
right.
you're doing feeds another thing. It's like you're working on the book, which you have to do anyway, but why not, gain some interest in it while you're doing it at the same time? And it's just, that's really the way to do it, is one thing needs to feed the other.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
it's
I
gonna be
can't believe
interesting.
nobody else is doing this on split
Yeah,
screen. You're right,
Yeah.
a penciler and
yeah.
an inker, and and then we're talking about the story. But I have a feeling like somebody will see our what we're doing and say, hey, I could be doing that at a much higher level.
Yeah. I'm not quite at 500 subscribers yet, but as soon as I hit that, I'm going to start to be doing like live streams while I work as well, just to see, so people can, because I think people are interested in seeing the process and how it unfolds at the same time. I
Yeah,
get a lot of people who are not comics people when I post like like time lapse drawings of stuff online that say, "Give me more of that,"
right.
and
Yeah.
people just love to watch it. It's like cathartic or something.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Well,
I tell
look,
I tell
we have
Kurt.
gone. Yeah,
Go ahead, Kurt. Wrap us up. Wrap
well,
us up.
let's pack it in, because we like to keep these things bite sized, 45 minutes, and we've gone over a little bit. It's only because what an amazing conversation, and we knew we were getting into, Chris, when we finally got you scheduled here. So once again, I just have to thank you for taking the time. The Indie Comic Exchange is really based on Jake and I getting things done, the teaser, and then being able to go back out to prior people and newer people to find out what they're working on. So, we really hope that you stay in touch with us as well as we will be staying in touch with you. But we want to give you the last few minutes to plug where you're at. People can find like you had mentioned a lot of things that are in the works that will be coming out. So let me have you take us out.
Cool. Yeah. So I also have a YouTube channel, Chris Anderson Comics, where I interview cartoonists and we talk about the book that they are working on currently, and then I have them on for a second episode where we talk about a book that inspired them to want to
Oh,
do
cool.
this or influence them in some way. Just to because I feel like passionate people breed passion in subjects. Like I'm not interested in cars, but when my brother starts talking about cars, I'm like, I want to know what he's talking about, and I get excited about it too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Contagion.
so I have that Patreon. I do a few things on there. I'm sorry, that YouTube channel. So I'm almost at 500 subscribers. So please go and subscribe and help me get there. Uh, and then I have a Patreon where I'm releasing my latest project, Three-Headed Pigman, which is a book I'm so happy with, and I just cannot wait for people to read. I'm about 7 pages in right now. But there's different levels where you either get the Masters of the Universe sketchbook that I showed you guys there for $3 a month, plus you get to read the Three-Headed Pigman and see a lot of the other stuff that I'm working on in process, and I'll talk about a lot of different things. The $5 level, you get these Masters of the Universe mini comics. It's just Masters of the Universe is something I've always loved, and it's a great way for me to gift them to you. And work around, I'm not selling them, so it's like work around copyright things and play in that world. Um,
Ah.
but I'll be giving out other like mini comics and goodies throughout the year as well. And then the $8 level, you get a commission. I'll do a commission for you at the end of the year. There's other levels too. Um, so I'm really trying to grow that this year, and it's working out really well for me. At the moment, besides Three-Headed Pigman, I am working on a book called Deep Fried. That it's a 150-page graphic novel I'm working on with a writer. I'm on page 130, so no,
Whoa.
140. So I'm almost done with that. And then I'm working on a book at the same time. I don't recommend doing that because it's long hours. But for Sumerian Comics, I'm on the second issue of that. It has not been announced yet, but it is tied into a band from the late 80s and 90s, and their logo is the main character in it. So it's a lot of fun, and I can't wait to announce it.
What's this band?
I can't say right now. I can't say anything
Okay.
yet. But I also have a
Something.
store. Oh, on the YouTube channel too. James Coates and I are right now going through the entire Chris Claremont X-Men run. Uh,
Oh boy.
yeah, I've never read it. He knows it like the back of his hand, so it's just kind of fun for both of us to go one issue at a time. So we call it the Chris Claremont X-Men Comic Club. So you can follow along with us. So and then I the thumbnails, I draw all the thumbnails every week and put like a speed drawing video at the end of it, and I have all of those plus Chaotic Neutral and Lost Angels and Spectral and other things up for sale on my website, which is chrisandersoncomics.com. Other than that, my next convention is going to be CXC in Columbus at the end of September. And other than that, I don't have anything planned. I'm just working.
Working,
Awesome.
working.
I'm gonna get those links into the descriptions, people, so you'll be able to get directly to them.
Awesome.
But I know if you put in Google Chris Anderson Comics, you come up. So you don't
Yeah,
have
a
any.
bunch of
You
stuff
don't.
comes
You don't
up.
have any. You don't have anything in competition. But Jake, do you have anything for these good people before we let them go back to reading comics, making them if they choose?
No, it was really good getting to know you. I think Kurt and I should maybe, next time you're back, maybe we'll go into the content a little bit more.
Sure.
I was looking at this one, and this one is like more a compilation of sketches
Yeah.
and cool character designs. But
Hmm.
this one looks like a really juicy story. So that, that'll be for the future. We'll have to hold it in abeyance for now.
Totally.
Um, Mean, Meantime, yeah, people can check out our other series. This is obviously the Indie Comic Exchange, and we have also the Making of Turbo Pit Fighter podcast and Comics That Influence, where we do our flip throughs. Um, uh, Kurt and I should be taping one soon with my beach haul, but that's all I got, Kurt. So why don't you fine feathered folks check us out next Sunday?
Absolutely. And Chris, hold tight. So we got a little bit of an after show close down. All right. So thanks again, everybody, and we will see you.